What's up, everybody? So on today's episode, I have my first guest. His name is Riley Maillet, and Riley is a professional wrestler, and he goes under the name Alexander Kable. How are you?
Man, I'm doing awesome, man. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah?
Yeah.
First of all, thanks a lot for accepting my invitation to come on the Savage Life. I really appreciate it. Like I said before, I met Riley at Torture Chamber Pro Wrestling Dojo. Basically, from the beginning, you were there. When did you start at Torture?
I enrolled in June of 2015. It's hard to believe it's already been...
Just a sec. Just set the microphone.
Closer? Oh. Yeah. Okay, cool. Sorry.
Yeah. Try to talk a bit, like, even if it's right up to your lips. I think it works. Test it out now.
Hello? Test?
Yeah, just a sec. I'm just going to crank that up here. So you came into Torture around what year again? Sorry.
I was actually wrong the first time I said it. Anyway, June 2016 was when I started. So it's been 3 years now. Hard to believe.
So I've pretty much known you since the beginning.
Yeah.
And how long did it take you before you had your first match?
It was about 2.5 years. 2 years and 2 months. I started August of 2018 was my debut. August 25th.
Okay. Now, one of the reasons why I wanted you to come on the podcast is that obviously I was there at Torture when you started. And even though I might have not been there all the time, I still noticed the new rookies, and, you know, I tend to try to help out a few of you guys, right? That's how it works at Torture. You know, the veterans try to help out the new guys and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I noticed about you was that, number one, you were obviously committed to becoming a professional wrestler. You live in Ottawa, so it's 2 hours about.
Yeah, it's
right?
about 2.5 to Torture Chamber because it's kind of on the other side of the island from Ottawa.
So basically, it's a 5-hour round trip just to come to Torture. So right there, 2 to 3 times a week, you came to Torture, and it was a 5-hour round trip. So right there, your commitment, to me right there, someone that's committed, I saw how hard you were willing to work to become a professional wrestler. And from talking to you at the beginning, I knew that you were extremely passionate about professional wrestling. Now, one of the things that I noticed early on is that, now correct me if I'm wrong, I might be completely wrong, this is my perspective, and one of the reasons why I brought you, I've invited you to come on the podcast. I saw you at the beginning, and I kind of like, I'm the type of person that if I like you, I'm going to pay attention to you, but I won't tell you. And I kind of do it like within the shadows. I don't do it maliciously, and I don't do it with everybody. But I saw certain qualities in you that I loved and that I think are important to be successful in life. And early on, I saw something in you, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, is your ability to adapt. And what I mean by that is I saw when you came there early on that in your mind, you thought that you had to put so much effort in this. And then once you were at Torture, you quickly realized that whatever you had said in your mind was just not enough, and that you needed to up your game already just by being surrounded by the certain, let's face it, sharks that were surrounded by you. And I see a lot of the young rookies, and I see a lot of people in general and their unwillingness to adapt, meaning they see where they need to be, and then they kind of calculate in their head like, oh, that's a lot of work. And then right there they go, nah, I'm not willing to put in that work. I noticed right away that you kind of realized that whatever effort you were putting out in that moment, it just wasn't enough. And you quickly adapted. And I started seeing you increase your workouts outside of being a Torture. You change the way you ate, just everything. And it started to show physically and in your training. Now, am I wrong in having that assessment?
You're pretty bang on. If anything, you were too kind in your assessment of my original condition when I joined Torture Chamber. I knew that wrestling was something that I wanted to do, and I was very, very lucky that I met a stranger in Cuba, and that led to my in the wrestling business. And I was behind the scenes for some independent wrestling shows, and I saw what they were doing, and even then I was like, oh geez, I don't know if I could do stuff like that. But then you think there are a lot of wrestlers that made it that had all kinds of different styles, and so I was like, well, I have to try. I mean, and then when I finally committed that we were going to be training in Montreal, I had about 4 months of, like you said, building myself up, building a profile of what I thought it was going to take mentally, and that barely got me over the doorstep into Torture Chamber. I realized real quick that I needed to do a lot more, or the effort that I was putting in, spending 15 hours a week in the car, was just being not wasted, but it was not going to get me where I needed to be.
And because I quickly noticed that about you, I became an instant fan of yours. And you weren't even a wrestler, and I was already a fan simply because I love seeing guys that are willing to admit when they're not only wrong, but when they're inadequate in something they do, and that they're willing to immediately make the changes. You didn't talk about making the changes. You didn't say, oh, I need to do this, or I'm going to do this. You just did it. And I noticed it, and others did as well. And that's why you're a professional wrestler now. Because, well, obviously, look, let's face it, you most likely would have still became a professional wrestler. It might have taken longer.
Yeah.
But that willingness to adapt to a certain circumstance and to just completely, I'm not saying throw everything out the door and just refocus, but it's like I said earlier, it's not everybody that's willing to do that. And I noticed that about you, and I see it now, even since you began your career and up to now, like your improvement in the ring. When I'm on the card with you, I make sure I watch, being from Torture, you quickly learn that you kind of look out for each other. So if you're on the same card as another Torture guy, you're going to watch his match if you can. Yeah. Sometimes you're the next match and you got to prepare. So it's impossible. But as much as possible, if I'm going to watch matches, it's going to be of the Torture guys. I don't always get them. Sometimes you get into a conversation with someone and you're just like, fuck, 3 matches just went on, and it's just, I've been having a lot more of those in the back now with guys. They just seem to be willing to chat about wrestling more. Mm-hmm. I guess it's something that comes with having more and more experience and seeing maybe that I'm able to work, and they're like, oh, let me put my ideas forward and this is how I do it. They're willing to share their experience without really me having to ask, which is something that is so valuable in professional wrestling. And so back up for a bit there. So you made the changes, you rededicated refocus your line, and it obviously made a difference, and you saw an immediate change. How did mentally, did it change you, or were you aware that it was going to not only be physically tough, but that the mental aspect of professional wrestling was something that was maybe not known to a lot of people? Because people just see us in the ring and they kind of go, these guys, they're in good shape and they whatever, but there's a mental fortitude required in order to be a professional wrestler that I think a lot of people just don't realize. How did you rate your mental fortitude before and after wrestling?
Oh man, I think that is even more of a transformation than the physical side of it. It was like, because at least I had a pretty good idea wrestling was going to be physically tough. Nobody said a thing about the mental side of it. And that, to me, is almost harder. It's a different kind of hard, but it's almost harder than the physical. It's for, I definitely, before I got into wrestling, I had a quitter mentality. Almost everything I ever thought in my life, it'd be, oh, that'd be cool to do. As soon as it got hard, I would back out of it. But as soon as I realized with wrestling that I wasn't going to do that, I was like, well, I guess I'm doing the right thing. And training, I like the harder, more intense a workout is. I actually enjoy it because I can just shut my mind off and my body takes over. But man, some of those drives home when you're by yourself in the car, 2.5 hours back from Montreal, yeah, you get some thoughts that are not fun to deal with.
When you say thoughts that aren't fun to deal with, and trust me, I've had a lot of thoughts that aren't fun to have. Basically, I'm pretty open about my struggles with anxiety and mental illness. Like I said, I've said many times, it's not to any degree than most people. Most likely because didn't let them grow to that size, and I quickly realized that by adding fitness, nutrition, changing my nutrition, increasing my fitness routine, and changing my workouts, basically just working out, changed everything for me. And it's a lot of, I don't know how it is for you or how it was. So those drives home, were they mostly spent like I'm wasting my time, or are they mostly spent like, oh, today was constructive?
At first, it was a lot of not wasting my time, but like I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm not capable. I physically can't. Like rolling was a big one for me. Like we start every session at Chamber with rolls, and I was petrified that I was going to break my neck to the point that like my mind would not let my body do a roll. And I was almost in tears, and sometimes literally in tears on the way home, because I'm like, 4-year-olds do this. 4-year-olds can do a somersault without being shown, and I'm a grown ass man, and I can't manage this. And it was just things like that. But then the more I started working outside, and that obviously fitness, and I'm so glad you say this, that fitness had a huge impact on my mental health. And I don't even think I realized it, because with this being my first foray into physical fitness, I just kind of thought that's what brains did. As you grew up, they got foggy, and they got, there were, you call them the demons. I definitely, I can relate to that 100%. Just the thoughts that are like, oh, we could do the easy thing. We don't have to go out today. We don't have to work out. Your homework, it's not due for a while. Play some video games, stuff like that.
So I'll stop you there, because you said something that was interesting to me. You said you basically thought that that's just how it was growing up, and that the more responsibility and the more, I guess, mature you became and the older you became, that it just was a normal thing, that it was part of your life. Basically what you're saying, that fogness, all those issues that you saw adults mostly dealing with, you're like, yeah, it's just fucking normal, and everybody deals with them, and one day I'm gonna have to deal with them.
Exactly.
And then whatever else I'm gonna have to try to do or accomplish in life, I'm just going to have to deal with those and juggle those between, and most of the time the fucking demons will win.
Yeah,
that's interesting that you think like that, because I know, from what I know of you, you don't seem like someone that grew up entitled. What I mean by that is, from the beginning, I saw how committed and dedicated you were to professional wrestling, and how you were willing to adapt and just put in the work, right? Mm-hmm. So that told me, for the most part, that you weren't someone that just thought that things could happen for you. You understood that there needed to be hard work applied here in order for me to get there.
Yes.
You seem to be able to do that. Another thing that was extremely, that I thought was great, was that you were actually studying all at the same time and doing this. So that just adds to the commitment of doing something. And everybody has to commit time and sacrifice time, especially when you're chasing a dream, when you're trying to accomplish a goal. Like you said, professional wrestling, I mean, you got the training, you're driving, then you're in the gym. Even like I live in Montreal, it's still a 30-minute drive, and it's still a 3 hours, and it's still a 30-minute drive back. It's sacrifice away from my but it was It was something that I did and I committed to, and then once I got, I was like, okay, I'm glad that it was worth it, Mm-hmm. I'm lucky also that I have a family that supports me 100% in any crazy fucking shit that I do, including becoming a professional wrestler at 35 years old. One of the things that I admire about you is that you kind of came into this knowing you were, especially, and I'm not saying that in any negative way, but you walked into Chamber, you saw the guys that were there. Right away you realized, oh, I'm not at the same baseline as these fucking guys.
Oh, yeah.
Or not everybody, let's be honest, but a lot of these guys. And I've been a torture for almost 5 years. And the guys that I've seen come in, pay their money, go through one training, and I never saw them again.
Yep.
If you made it, and then you made it through a cardio Thursday, and I kept seeing you back and back, I'm like, that motherfucker, that guy wants to be a professional wrestler. And I see a lot of these kids, and thank God, because professional wrestling is healthy and it's growing and everybody's happy. But that fucking dedication, all while you're like, it's normal that when you are chasing a dream that you're going to have those negative thoughts, those doubts. How did you deal with those things?
Well, it was in steps, and it kind of happened so gradually that a lot of it just kind of got like the positives came up and the negatives went down so gradually in a lot of instances that I don't specifically remember a lot. But what stood out to me was talking about Cardio Thursday. I started on a Cardio Thursday, and I was violently ill. I came back next Cardio Thursday, I got sick again. 8 consecutive Cardio Thursdays, I pushed myself so hard that I puked, which, considering I'd done basically zero physical activity in my life, it wasn't all that much of a push to make myself sick. But
yeah,
I remember week 9, I didn't get sick. And that was kind of like the first time I was like, all right, it's a step.
It's a step, and it's an improvement, right? Mm-hmm. When you saw an improvement, that obviously, when you see that step forward mentally, you're like, holy shit. Like, that drive home that day must have been a lot better than the other drives.
For sure. It was, I just remember that time I had a big smile on my face the whole way home, and I was like, maybe I could be a wrestler. Maybe I can do this. Maybe I will do this. And then the next step, and I think I even made the conscious decision before I got home that night, was to take the maybe out of this. And then it was just, I will be a wrestler.
So you went from saying, maybe I have a shot at this, to going, yo, I'm going to fucking do this.
Yeah.
And then I'm assuming that after that moment, everything changed. Or it started gradually changing.
Yes. There were some moments where I backslid, which I think everybody probably goes through.
It's normal.
There were some moments where, again, I would start to doubt myself if there was something I just couldn't do. But that was really where it was like, all right, if we're going to be able to do this, we're going to have to start making a plan. And then that plan involved some of the things you were talking about, like changing the way I eat. One of the first steps, actually, not too long after that, I started looking into getting a gymnastics coach to help me learn how to roll.
Yes, sir.
I was fortunate enough to meet one that was also training to be a wrestler in a different, he was training in Ottawa to be a wrestler. So he kind of took me under his wing, and he and one of his coworkers brought me through the whole step that they would teach like a child how to roll. Like every single piece of equipment that they have for children, they applied to me. And it was just, that was another one of the big, I would say more so than that Cardio Thursday. That was a small spark where it changed. But then after that, the time at the gymnastics center was when it was like, oh shit, now there's a fire under my ass. Now that was the big roadblock for me.
Do you think that just having the willingness to go out there, put yourself on the line, be vulnerable and ask for help to a gymnast coach to just learn a role, that by itself, for anybody, 90% of people would have gone, I'm not going to ask help to do this, just simply because you're doing this to help you in a different endeavor, right? You're like, I need to fix something. And for you, it was a role. It was a movement thing. Like, whoa. And then you actually thought about it. You go, how about gymnast coach? And then you went and you seeked it out and then you boom. Mm-hmm. That is something that a lot of people don't have. They're not willing to put their ego out of the way and go, I need fucking help with this. Instead of going, no, I'll fucking figure it out on my own. Did it take long for you to go like, fuck, to ask? Or it was just like, oh, maybe if I do ask, it might help?
I actually, in this case, it kind of, the universe presented it to me because I met this guy who was also training. And I was telling him that, like, man, I'm having a hard time. Because I open up pretty easily about things because I think that if I talk about things that I go through, that other people might think, like, if they were in my situation, they might think, oh man, I'm so dumb, I can't do this role. You know, for me, I'd be like, I would like to talk about that, because then if somebody else out there has a similar thing that's going on, they're like, okay, well, I'm not alone. He figured it out. Maybe, you know, it gives them the spark to do that for someone else. But in terms of, I'm sorry, I kind of got away from your original question, but the being able to ask for help was also something that was pretty new to me. I liked it. Excuse me. I'm just going to take a quick sip.
It's all right.
Getting a little choked up. I always kind of thought that I should be able to do things alone, but wrestling taught me that wasn't possible. So that being able to, it didn't take too long for me to realize that I needed to do something. And when that opportunity presented itself, it taught me a lot about asking for help is not, it's not a sign of weakness. It's not admitting defeat about anything. It's
of course not. It's hard to admit that for a lot of people though, because I myself, a lot of the times won't ask for help or less willing to do it. It's something that, like you, that I just either need to work on, or sometimes I feel like it's just not needed. For me, I kind of calculate the pros and cons. So I'm like, okay, if I figure it out myself, I'm going to learn something if I figure it out by myself. I'm going to not only learn new skills, but in the process, but I'm also going to learn something about myself. I wasn't always willing to learn something about myself because I was so afraid of what I would notice. And I was like, every time I noticed something shitty about me, I would instantly go, nope, back up and different direction. Because I was my ego would not let me see the crack in the armor. It would just go like, just bob and weave onto the great terrain. Nope, don't go down there. There's demons down there. You can't go there. You got to keep on this. This is all rainbows and puppies over here. It's only when I would like, no, back up, check what's in door number 1 here, because it's fucking with me. And for me was I held it in for so long until it broke me. And then I had like some sort of like mental breakdown and was, off work for a long time. And that's when I discovered that I had issues that were a lot more than just figure it out on your own. Either change shit about your life or it's just going to get worse. Yeah. And for me, my whole life has been trial and error. I see it like that. It's something that has made me who I am. So a lot of the times, if I'm faced with a problem, I'll go, fuck this. I've been by myself my whole life. I'm gonna fucking do this by myself. And a lot of times it works, and sometimes it doesn't work. But the fucking mental fortitude jump that I get from these little things that I learn are amazing. But when I ask for help, and after that the help has come and I'm better at something else, then I always go, fuck, why didn't I ask for help before, right?
Would have been so much easier, right? If you just gone from the start. And
being fucking not just a human, but a male human sometimes, I think I know a lot of people don't want to be gender specific, but in this day and age, but I'm telling you right now, as a guy, there are things that go through my head that a woman would never, ever, ever think about. I'm at a point in my life where, like, right now, it's like, what's next? It's like I'm on this fucking mission to push myself to my physical limits right now. I'm on a mission, and it's slow. Every day that I push myself at the gym, I realize, like, fuck, I'm deficient here. I'm strong here, but I'm not strong here. That's my obsession. I'm obsessed and addicted to working out and to that fucking pushing myself. But it helps me everywhere else. It's been at least, I don't know how many months. I don't really pay attention, but it's been, let's say, 6 months where my workouts are like harder. I incrementally, like, I changed my whole workout routine. I spoke about this before, but dude, ever since I've really ramped up my cardiovascular workout where I push, and my saunas sessions, my anxiety, I don't remember last time I had anxiety. And when it creeps up, the other fucking shit goes, get the immediately. It goes immediately. It's like, you're having negative thoughts. Don't go out this road. Just crush this fucking, and then after it goes, it's not that bad. And it's, I owe it all to working out. That's me. It can't be everybody, but that's me.
Well, first of all, when you restarted the podcast, you started talking about you're going to give shout outs to motivational people to follow on social media.
Yeah.
I would hope all your listeners are following you, but you're one inspirational motherfucker yourself.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
I can't even count, and I wish I told you every single time. I remember telling you a few times where I was having nights where I'm like, it's not worth it. Don't go out. Don't go to the gym. Just stay in. And I saw your Instagram story. I was like, well, this motherfucker has a family. He works a hard job, like a physical job all day. He balances wrestling training and goes to the gym every night. Yeah, I'm going to the gym. I'm going to go work out. And so those are some of the best workouts I ever had, because it's like, well, gotta level up because I've always looked up to you, man. Like, ever since I first met you at Torture Chamber, you were one of the people I always looked up to.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that.
And so much so that I never unfollowed your podcast. So for 18 months, every time I opened up my podcasting app to go listen to the new episode of Rogan or whatever, you were the only person I was following. So I would see your face every time I opened up my podcasting app.
It's nice to hear things like that, because, like I've said it before, I know it might sound weird, but I don't do this for them to get the view. I don't pay attention. I honestly don't. I don't check my stats. I do once in a while, but it's just to make sure that I don't have 1 million listeners, because then
you
somebody
and
I need to start getting sponsors at this point.
Yeah.
But like I've said before, even if it was only 1, 2, 5 guys, and I've got message from you, but I've got messages from other people, and they're like, and I recently ramped up my social media in towards what I'm doing in my life right now. So, like, when I wrestle, I use my social media platform to promote my wrestling shows and to promote the school as much as possible. But recently, like I said, like, I'm on a mission to just ramp up my cardiovascular. I'm obsessed. The problem with me is that I'm obsessed with living forever. And I'm just in that mind frame. And I'm slowly building to the Ben Greenfield. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's like one of those guys that, anyway, like, they're like this. I follow a lot of these super athletes and the people that do like 200-mile runs.
Fucking ultra marathoners.
That's
a different kind of person.
Yeah. So I follow a lot of these guys, not for the fitness part of it, but because I want to know what's in their fucking head. Because I've ramped up my running recently, and the only reason I ramped it up is because it's the only thing that will make me cry. It's not cry, but my body just stop. And I push it. And when I'm done, it's like, fuck, like, I can do this. And you always quit. every time I've quit from running, and it's not because I can't run anymore. It's because my mental is like, yo, it's enough. Mm-hmm. It's enough. Like, it's always mental. And that mental fortitude that those ultra marathoners that's what I want. That's what I want to know. And that's why every time I go in the gym, 90% of the time, I know I should be in recovery mode a lot more. My health strap there that I have tells me that.
Yeah.
But I get to the gym, I'm like, today I'll be fucking relaxed, active recovery. I'll do a few. Nah, it's 45 minutes later. I'm doing a fucking workout from hell, and I'm trying to beat the record from the week before, and then my fucking heart's in like 170, and I'm like, fuck. But it fucking helps me everywhere else, so fuck it. Bro. Fuck it, because I'm a better version of myself around my kids and around my wife and around other people, and that's worth it.
I fucking 100% relate to that, man. And the thing that was the big light switch moment for me was when I stopped comparing my fitness to other people and just started competing with myself and trying to be better than I was before.
It's the key to everybody moving forward.
Yeah.
I, for the longest time, would tell people I don't care what people think, but it was the fucking number one thought in my head. Mm-hmm. I would stop myself from putting out a post or putting out a podcast or putting out ideas or thoughts simply because I was fearful of what others would think of me, and it broke me. And just recently, like I'd say like a few months ago, where I realized that it doesn't fucking matter what not only others think, but even what my family thinks. It's only about what you believe makes you better for the people around you. And for me, you know this, my family is above all else by a long shot the most important thing in my life. And if I do not do everything in my power to be the best version of myself around these people, that I'm failing. And I can't fail, because it's not about me, it's about my kids now. And I want my kids to see that my dad does this, and they slowly, obviously they're like, oh, daddy, why are you going to the gym every night? They don't ask that anymore, because they're like, yeah, he goes to the gym every night, but he doesn't scream as much. So go to the gym every night, and I get to play more PlayStation, or I get to be on my phone longer because dad's fucking tired and he doesn't want to scream at us. My kids became my purpose. They're not directly my purpose, but making sure that they have all the tools in life that I didn't get to have at a lower age. That I only started having the tools to be successful in life at like when I discovered martial arts in my mid-20s. If it wasn't for that, I'd still be lost. I want to make sure my kids start accumulating those tools early on in life. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think that's important. What, other than what, seeing others, obviously wrestlers and people and stuff, you have other source of kind of inspiration and motivation that keeps you going, or is it just in your head?
Well, there's whenever I get down on myself, a lot of people pull up those motivational videos on YouTube.
Yeah.
And some of those are great. I have a lot of CT Fletcher like on a playlist, like his spoken word that he does over like, battle score music in the background.
Yeah.
Honestly, this might sound weird, but when I need a little bit more inspiration, I go back and listen to some of my favorite wrestling promos.
Yeah.
And just, seeing the guys that I look up to as wrestlers putting themselves out there. So that's a big one. I also take a lot of inspiration from my mom, as cheesy as that may sound.
No, not at all.
She's definitely my biggest fan, but she's also one of the strongest people I've ever met. And I'm very lucky to have, and my dad too, for sure. But my dad lives in the Arctic, so I don't get to see him as much as I'd like. But seeing my mom every day, she keeps it together. She runs the family. She's always got my back. And when I think about not giving 100%, I feel like I'm cheating her, because she's done so much to support me.
Yeah.
That is a big one for me to pull from.
When you have family members that support you and like really support you, like my kids will support me because I'm their dad. I don't really talk about my kids as support. My kids are more of a inspiration. They're more of a purpose. They're more of a reason. Like, I can't fuck this up, because if I fuck up, then they're gonna fuck up. And considering how I grew up, no father, a mother. Mostly I grew up with my grandparents, I didn't have I didn't have even close. I had a great upbringing. I was super lucky. I was an only child. I was taken care of, no problem. But in a certain aspect of life, I started at a lower level simply because I didn't have the father figures and I didn't have certain things. And I still grew up to be somewhat okay but my perspective in life is obviously skewed because of how your upbringing, right? All the bullshit in your life. When it comes to my kids, I have to make sure that I can't like every time I fuck up with them, I'm super transparent with them, with my kids, and I tell them like I fucked up. I shouldn't have lost my shit because of this. It's just especially my son. But when it comes to finding, like, I don't talk about my wife a lot, but like your mom, she's the hardest, she's the strong. Like, for me, my wife is the strongest person I've ever met in my entire fucking life. There's no one, People ask me like, oh, you're always fucking working hard. My wife inspires me, because the only time I'm the hardest worker in the room is when my wife is not in the room with me. Now, she works at her job because she loves it. She's an event planner and she just loves all that shit and doing all that. She's great at it. So she fucking loves it. But she puts in the hours and she's dedicated. And I see how much she's dedicated also as a mother and as a family. And then she supports my fucked up, like, hey, hun, I know I'm 35 years old and I just kind of retired from martial arts and from getting my head bashed in. But do you mind if I start training to become a professional wrestler? And then give me a year. If it doesn't work after a year, we don't speak about it anymore. And my wife was like, what do you want me to do? Stop you? And she didn't. And the rest is history, right? She's at every show that, every torture show, my wife and my kids are there if they can make it. They've missed maybe one. And she supports me not only by being there, but by being at home with the kids when I'm on the road.
Oh, yeah.
By being like home with the kids when I'm in the gym, when I'm wrestling. So because of that, I find myself extremely lucky to have someone like that, right? She supported me when I was fighting, and now she's supporting me. And we kind of, I think we kind of share the inspiration. She doesn't know this. She doesn't know how because I just don't tell her. And, but we're two different animals. My wife is not into fitness or working out at all. I guess consider her a workaholic, but like I said, she loves her job, right? But she's a different type of person, but I'm also inspired by her. So when you said your mom for you was the strongest person, obviously it's a relationship that I see because your mom comes to all your shows. So when we wrestle, and I love your mother, and she's the best. And the fact that she comes to all your shows, I see who you are and why you are how you are. And those are the things that I tell my wife about you. I'm like, dude, his mom was there tonight. And I'm like, it's amazing. He's grown so much as a person, as a wrestler. Like, I just love seeing people succeed. Once you became that wrestler, once you became that pro wrestler, how did everything change after that? Like, was it a small change for you? Was it like, okay, now I just have to juggle the schedule of being a professional wrestler? Or was it like, oh shit, no, I'm a fucking pro wrestler. I'm a fucking pro wrestler. I've worked hard and I've accomplished something, and holy shit, now I'm a pro wrestler.
Well, something that you mentioned on your podcast, like one of the previous episodes, was when you're working towards a goal all the time, it can be hard to recognize a specific accomplishment along the road, because you've got your head down and you're like, all right, goal's over there, put my head back down, get back to work, keep pressing on. I kind of got caught up in it where I was like, yeah, I'm a pro wrestler, and I was very, very fortunate to get a lot of really cool opportunities right off the bat. And it just kind of was reaching around. I was like, okay, that happened. That was cool. Check it off the list. What's next? What are we doing next? What are we doing next? And it was, it wasn't until I was with a friend that I hadn't seen for a little while. I hadn't seen actually since before I started wrestling, that they're like, dude, you fucking did it. You're a fucking pro wrestler now. How crazy is that? And I was like, you're right. And then it sounds like probably sounds so stupid, but it was still trying to get through school, trying to train as much as I could still, and wrestle almost every weekend. It wasn't an immediate, like, I got in a ring the first time and then it was like,
yeah, because you kind of understood there was still work to be done. So the fact that you had actually stepped into the ring and had your first match, that was just the beginning. So you were like, I'm not going to get too caught up in this. Plus, I'm still juggling everything else, so I'm still not done accomplishing the goal as far as studying and other stuff. So this just kind of changes my life a little bit, but not that much.
Yeah, it was. And not to put, I loved my first match will be something that I will remember forever. I will tell my great grandkids about, hopefully, if medical science allows me to live that long. And I'm very thankful for the person that stepped up, Gabriel, that stepped up to wrestle me in my first match. And he gave me the best intro to the business ever. And it was like, for that day and for like a week after that, it was a crazy high that I was determined I was not going to come down from. But then after that, it was like, okay, that was the beginning. Now, not to say now the real work starts, but now it's a different kind of work. Now it's navigating. Again, I was kind of becoming aware of the mental aspects of being a wrestler that I was not.
Well, I think the mental aspect, or the mental fortitude, the mental side of the business becomes way more apparent after you had your first match and now you're a professional wrestler.
Yeah.
Because now you have to deal with the stress of being that guy that shows up at venues and shows and you're like, hey, I'm the new guy. Yeah. Who am I working with tonight? And you're like, hey, hi, tell me everything. Right?
It was a lot of that too. And it was really my first match. I was very fortunate that I packed the place with my friends and family. So it's kind of like I stacked the deck for myself to have a good first go around. And I had a great opponent, as I said. But the second match, I wrestled at a county fair in Picton on very short notice. And my opponent didn't show up until like 5 minutes before our match was supposed to start.
Ooh.
And I didn't know anybody. Well, as it turns out, my mother surprised me and brought some people to that show too. But what really got me on that one was at intermission, I came out and all the kids in the place were coming over to me, asking me to sign things, asking for pictures. And I was like, what the fuck? And then I was like, oh shit, I have to be a superhero for these kids.
Yeah.
And that was something I was not ready for. That's a whole nother level, because even if it's you're coming into, obviously, like, I'm super excited every time I get the chance to wrestle. I don't take it for granted. I love every opportunity I've ever gotten, but just from external factors, sometimes you come into a match, you're not feeling 100% going in. But
happens a lot.
But when you see the kids in the crowd, like, to them, you're fucking Batman or you're Iron Man or you're whoever, and you can't let being off show through to them. So you have to learn. That's another mental aspect, is you have to learn to put up a wall and be like, all right, my personal life happens, work, school, whatever.
Yeah.
Tonight, I'm Alexander Kable. I put on those leather pants and I got to be I got to fit the preconceived notions about what a professional wrestler is.
That's right.
And if you're not, then you're letting them down. And then just knowing that you could be letting people down is another level of the mental game,
Well, I think for being in the business that we're in, that's a great way to look at it, because, you're right. When the curtain opens and you're walking out, for me anyway, it's like literally from the match before to the match ending before, where I know I'm next. Like, if I don't need to discuss anything with my opponent or with anybody else, that's the time where people think for the most part, I don't know how it is for you, but because I come from a fighting background where that switch needed to be turned on, where it's that switch that goes, you can't give a fuck about anything right now except going out there and performing. Now, when I fought, it was mixed with don't get killed, don't get knocked out, don't get embarrassed in front of your family or your friends that came to watch you. But it was also like there's a kind of carefree mentality. Like you kind of have to be willing to just put yourself out there and be able to deal with the pressure. Once you became that professional wrestler, once you went over the hump and started working, now that you had accomplished something, because I know for me, once I accomplished something that I actually set myself goal, I know right away sometimes it wasn't right away where you just kept going and until someone made you realize like, oh yeah, let me look back here and holy shit, I'm far away.
Yeah.
Wow, I can't even see the coast anymore.
Yep.
Wow, I can't see the starting line. I'm here. I accomplished all this. Oh, it's so nice. You can't sit too long though on that feeling. You got to go, okay, what's next, right? Yeah. That's how I feel. But what I love about those feelings is that it then becomes apparent in other things in your life. So once I'm doing something else that's not related to wrestling, I just go, hey, remember when you thought becoming a professional wrestler was going to be hard? Oh, you did that. What's this fucking little hurdle you have to go through? Oh, you got to do this extra? Just fucking bite the bullet and just shut. Sometimes I had to tell I don't know if you've never noticed, but if I'm going through a hard workout, I try not to do it at the gym because I work out alone. But if I'm in a group that people know me, like I'll yell at myself.
Yeah.
I yell at that voice in my head that goes, stop this bullshit. And I'm like, fuck you. No, like that one that goes, you've done enough. Quit. Yeah, you got half a round to go, but just quit now. Just quit. Just stop. And I have to tell it like, fuck you. I know I listened to you for way too long and look where it got me. It didn't get me anywhere positive. So for me, once I've accomplished something small, big, or whatever, just something that I had set out to accomplish is done. Everything else after it kind of goes, well, fuck. Yeah, it seems like a big, crazy ass dream you have, but, well, you did become a professional wrestler at 35. Oh, yeah. Fuck. How about you just keep working at this? And one other thing that recently helps me with my goals and my endeavors and whatever is that I don't put as much pressure on myself to succeed as fast as I want. It's like, just trust the fucking process. Just let it come organically, because if you force it too much, it's too much. I find that if I force it too much, I get too much of that angst and anguish and like fuck, it just doesn't fit anymore.
Absolutely. Before I lose this train of thought, something you just said really resonated with me when you're talking about saying, you talk to yourself while you're working out.
Yeah. I
fucking definitely do that too. I find that if I'm just trying to battle the voice in my head that's saying to stop or like, take it easy, cool down, that if I just think, no, fuck you, no, we're going to keep going, I have a hard time. But if I say it out loud, something about vocalizing it or externalizing it or writing it down makes it stronger than just a thought. So that's why, like in our group workouts, I'm always trying to make some noise, at chamber and stuff, because if I do that, it's easier for me to be like, well, if you're telling people keep going, you have to keep going,
People don't realize sometimes when you put something out there that you're like, fuck, I have to do this now.
Yep.
Like sometimes just saying, hey, I'm going to do this. I don't have a choice, because now people are going to see it. That's why, like, you follow me on social media.
Yeah.
I post my workouts, right? I do it because certain people are like, oh, I love your workouts. I'll try it at because, people that follow from back home or that share the same enthusiasm of working out and CrossFitting and all that stuff. But one thing that I try to do is I try to post it before the workout so that it gives me that little more of like that, well, I can't quit now.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I come up with workouts and I'm like, fuck. Like the workout I came up with today, I was like, how about I do this bang, 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 bang. I'm like, yeah, okay, for Saturday, I'm well recovered. I feel great. But I go through the first round. Basically, the workout I came up with was 3 rounds for time. Let's see how long it takes me. I go through 1 round. I'm like, God, fuck, this was hard. It's harder than I thought. But I put it out there. So I'm like, fuck, now I have to work. Now I have to finish this. But for me, the more I go along, the stronger I become. The first round, it was like that when I fought. So when I sparred, it was like first 2 rounds, it was like, ugh. But third, fourth, fifth round in sparring, that's where I pick it up. Because I'm too tired to think, and I don't think anymore. And then when I don't think is when I perform better. Yep. It's the same thing in wrestling. I'm sure it's the same for you, right?
Yep. It's and so it's kind of funny too, because I've had a couple of personal trainers, but most of which started out as friends and then they started training me. And one of them happened to be a wrestler who I've got the opportunity to work with a couple times.
Okay.
And we did a lot of workouts, a similar structure, for time or as many rounds as you can get in the time or whatever, which was all new to me. Before that, it was powerlifting. It was 5 minutes between sets because you're doing weight that you have to give your body time to recover from. But one of the things that I learned about training that way is we would kind of structure it like a match, in that, without going behind the business too much, always making sure that you have enough in the tank for the last round to push back out and work hard for that last round.
Yeah.
After maybe conserving and going at a manageable pace for a few rounds in the middle, you got to come back and on that last round, you got to give everything. And so that really helped me with wrestling because I was trained to be able to do that. So when it was time for the match, the end of the match, I was able to make it a bit more explosive than I otherwise would have. You see a lot of wrestlers around here get out there and 5 minutes in, they got nothing left in the tank. So then the end of the match sometimes ends up underwhelming.
Happens a lot.
Yeah.
I've seen it.
And, don't get me wrong. There have been times where I underestimated how far we were going and I didn't have much left at the end, but I always had that little bit just for the last. And
that has a lot to say also how you've been trained. I mean, one thing about guys that come from torture chamber is that Drew Onyx makes sure he makes you an athlete before he makes you a wrestler or at the same time. So when you're in the ring, I've never seen a torture guy that I've been worried about their cardio and have them gas out at 30 seconds. Like, I swear to God, and I don't want to sound like an asshole, but there's a lot of times when I get back and I'm like, can I go? Can I have another match? Yep. Please. Please. Like, and every time I have a match where I'm like, I was pushed, half the time it's against another torture guy or against a really elite top guy from another promotion where I'm like, all right, these guys, they can fucking push it. But just, I have a different style as well where I'm like a buzzsaw. It's like I don't stop because my mentality is fighting and I know it's pro wrestling, but sometimes, like I said, when I get in that mode right before my match, I turn that switch on and I don't see sometimes a lot of difference between fighting and wrestling. It's all kind of a blur to me. It's like I have a hard time towing that line sometimes because I'll stiff you and I'll be like, fuck, sorry. And some guys like it and some guys don't. And it's something that I keep working at to make sure that I don't fuck up. But we've been at it for about almost an hour. So we're going to, like I've said before, I try to keep it under an hour, but we're 53 minutes in just before we end because it can be another 15, 20 minutes. So I was thinking about this in the sauna earlier. I went to a workout and I was in the sauna. I was thinking about our conversation we're going to have today. And I was thinking of the reason why I had you on. And the reason why I had you on, like I mentioned at the beginning, was because it's in professional wrestling, especially, it applies to in different athletic ventures. You see it in boxing a little bit, not as much anymore. You see it in MMA, but lately not as much anymore. Professional wrestling, I consider it, it's definitely an athletic feat. There's obviously an entertainment part of it that doesn't need you to be athletic. But if you're, at the end of the day, if you want to be considered a top guy, you gotta have either a huge charismatic gimmick or be able to look like a fucking like a superhero to those kids, right? Or to the people that go to the wrestling and go like, I wish I was like him, or they kind of live through you, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be the big buff guy, because if there's one thing that a lot these days I find that's changed about wrestling is it's not about the Hogan 6'8", 300-pound guys anymore. It's the guys that can go for 15 minutes. And I'm not a spot monkey type of guy, but sometimes it's impressive and the fans like it. So who am I to judge what people like? It seems to be popular, that style of wrestling. So fuck it. I don't tend to go that way. I'm more of the, I'll kick you in the chest and the crowd's going to go, ooh.
Yep.
And I'm going to get a similar reaction. And if I did a 360 off the top rope, which I don't know how to do, right? But back to you. I fucking lost my train of thought here. But one of the reasons, like I said before, was that in professional wrestling, I quickly learned that you can't judge a book by its cover. You can't look at a guy and go like, what the fuck? That guy could go, that guy could go, that guy could give it. It's like really like back to inviting you on the podcast and trying to have a conversation, and not necessarily based on professional wrestling, but you are a professional wrestler. I was really wanting to get into the background of, like I said, like your motivation, your inspiration and everything. And we've been through a lot of that. Because I know for me, the more that I'm able to maneuver myself through life with all these crazy dreams and accomplishments that I want to achieve, I have to become better at navigating the waters. And then I try to seek out the tools that make me a better person in order to, like, I'm super open at trying new things just to, like I said, be the best version. I believe that if I'm at peak Stefan, that's where I'm at my best. That's where I can perform anywhere in my life. How, if any, like for me, it's working out. For me, I push myself physically, and it seems to be helping out in all my other things. Now, congratulations. You told me today that you are almost officially done with school.
Yeah, I had my last class. I just got to pass 2 exams now. So
congratulations.
Thank you.
So 2 exams and you will become a
computer engineer.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. It's been a crazy road.
It's obviously something it's taken a lot of your time, a lot of your commitment, hard work to have a degree in anything. Let's be honest. It's something that most of us don't. I have a degree. You'll have a degree. You'll be able, and I believe you have a job already lined up, right?
I do, yeah.
How, and if, I don't know how you see it, but how old are you?
I just turned 25 a couple weeks ago.
So with this new adventure, let's call it that, do you see yourself as the computer guy and as the pro wrestler, or is that guy someone of the same person, like in and out of the ring? Like what I'm trying to say is like, how do you kind of like manage your whole life now that you're a professional wrestler? The reason why I ask is because I know that being a professional wrestler quickly becomes your identity. You tell people you're a professional wrestler, you're a professional wrestler to them. Yep. You're a fucking what? What do you mean professional wrestling? Like WWF shit? Right there, you're like, that's your identity. You're a professional wrestler. So from now on, like when people ask me what I do for a living, I'm like, I'm a professional wrestler that works a full-time job, basically. Because my identity isn't the warehouse guy.
Yeah.
It's the professional wrestler. It's the guy that's in the gym, and it's the guy that's in the ring. That's who I am. Mm-hmm. But that persona becomes part of who I am because the persona I am in the ring is me turned up to 11, basically. How has the does it translate in your life like me, or is it completely different?
Well, it does. It's funny that you say you're the pro wrestler that works in a factory, because I actually was going to get business cards printed that say Riley Maillet, professional wrestler, amateur computer engineer. But I don't think my new boss would be too happy about that.
No, because you're actually getting paid a lot more money to be that computer guy, right?
Yeah, but it's crazy how the tools that I've gained through professional wrestling have translated into my real life. But in terms of
Sorry, I don't want to cut you off. Would you say it's the professional wrestling, or all the work that you've put in to become the professional wrestler?
That it's certainly that. It was certainly the tools that I gained on my own, but also, like you're saying, Drew did a great job. Drew drew blood from the stone by turning me into an athlete from where I started. And he taught me a lot, both directly through the classes and just from, watching and observing things that have served me so well in life, like discipline, the value of hard work, and just not ever allowing yourself to give up. Like, as long as you're giving your 100%, even if your 100% is not the same as someone else's 100%,
yeah,
it's still 100% for you. And that was something that was huge to me, that I've taken into my personal life. So I would say that the wrestling side of me, Alexander Kable is from arriving at a show to leaving a show is one guy. And but being that guy then, and the journey that brought me there, has made me a much better person and a much more complete person in my day-to-day life.
Yeah.
But for me, there is still a separation, because having that separation lets me do things in the ring that I would not be comfortable doing in my personal life, like screaming at children.
Yeah. It's not you, because I know you as Riley, and I know you as Alexander Kable, and they're not they're the same, but complete. They could be mistaken if you didn't look alike. Was what I'm trying to say is like, and that's fine. Like, for me, there's not really any different. Like, the goal when I go in to anything is to win. If it's a match, I don't care who you are. You're a face, you're a heel, you're a good guy, you're a bad guy, you're big, you're small. I'm going to bite down on my mouth guard, basically, and I'm going to hit you as hard as I can. And if I don't beat you, then I'm going to go back to the drawing board. That's who I am. That's who I perceive to be in the ring. I just scream a lot more and scream savage 18 times in a match. Not 18, a couple of times. But I said this to my son the other day. As I was fucking going through one of his, I wouldn't call him, but like, it was one of those teachable moments, and I basically told him, I said, it's not about learning, because it was related to school. And I said, it's not about learning the thing. It's about the work you're going to put in order to learn that thing. Because you obviously don't know this very well, because the grade you brought me home is straight garbage. So you need to apply more work to learning this and learning how to do it properly. And once you get there, I don't give a fuck that you're able to multiply freehand, because you won't need it in life, because you have a fucking phone attached to your pocket, right?
Yep.
I don't get me started in the schooling system. I do not agree with it at all.
I'm
but
with you on that one.
I told my son, you can't see the result. You have to see the work that you put in to get that result. That result is simply the accumulation of every single second, minute you've put towards that thing. But everything you've learned while getting to that goal, either it's how to learn how to write your name when you're a kid, or learning how to do algebra when you're older, you might not want to learn it because you think it's useless, and it might be, it probably is, but the work, that aspect of it that you're going to put behind it, is what is going to be valuable for you. Because once you do it, you'll be willing to do it again for something that if you're willing to do it for something you hate, you will fucking definitely be able to do it for something that you are passionate about.
100%. And I wish that the emphasis on learning that was mentioned once in school, because I was very much that kid, like, why do I need to learn this? I'm not going to use whatever. I'm not going to. So I did slack a lot in school. And I think that if somebody had sat me down and explained that to me and been like, although I probably wouldn't have understood it very well as a kid, I think.
But that's the thing. I could scream that at him till I'm red in the face, and he's like, I don't fucking get it. I don't get it, because he's a kid, right? And when you're a kid, things come to you easily, so you have to put less. You don't have to press on the gas as hard. Yeah. You're like, yeah, I got a result. I put in some work and I got a result. Is it good enough? Fuck, it's good enough. Because what am I going to scream at you because you brought home a 65 instead of a 75? Like, it's pass, okay, but know that you have to aim higher. And I put a lot of pressure on myself, and sometimes not pressure, but I make them understand that it's at the end, it's not the fucking thing you're learning. It's the tools you'll be able to gain from doing the work, so that later on in life, when you're actually doing something that you want and that is hard, you'll be like, oh, okay, I know how to deal with this, because I understood that the process is the most important thing and not the end, because it's only during the process where you go, fuck, how I learned this about myself, right? Like, that's how it is for me now, and that's how I want it to be for my son, because I didn't see it like that when I was younger. And I want to make sure my son doesn't grow up thinking that shit is just going to happen for him and he doesn't have to want to put the hard work. So I think it's also why I work so hard at being an example for him, and then it kind of bleeds out in being examples for other people.
I would be willing to bet that you will get a phone call from your son, some years down the line, when he finally fucking realizes what you were preparing him for, and being like, oh, you were right all along. So, preemptive congratulations for when that happens.
I don't. The thing is that, it would be great to have that phone call, but I don't do it for the phone call. No, but I know what you mean. Like, I don't do it for the applause. I just do it because I want to make sure my son doesn't go through the same shitty mistakes that I did. And like I said, I didn't go through, like, I wasn't a drug addict. I'm not a criminal. I didn't do anything super like bad, but it was just like, I feel like that I matured a lot later in life than I should have, simply because for the longest time I thought I was entitled to getting all these things when I wasn't, and I never put in work, right? And that's one thing that one of the reasons why I wanted a guy like you on my podcast is because you're one of those young. When I discovered martial arts when I was around your age, and it changed my life because it immediately made me realize that, I actually have to work hard to accomplish something. Fuck. And it changed my whole perspective on life, and it made me who I am today. I'd like to say that I wish I would have started professional wrestling when I was 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. I wish I would have walked into torture, but if I walked into torture 10 years ago, that means I wouldn't have had that experience martial arts taught me. So I would have probably quit because I didn't have the tools to make it. And it was only through the journey of martial arts and meeting certain people through that journey up until I met Drew. If I had met Drew 10 years ago, he probably wouldn't have been, he would have been like, get out. Like, you're just waiting to quit, and I could see it. And if I didn't have those tools. So when I see a guy like you come in and be willing to be adaptive and be willing to do the work at your age because you're passionate about something, it tells me something about your character, and it tells me that you're willing to be open-minded about everything, and that only by your willingness to learn the craft of professional wrestling or anything. You became a computer engineer, a professional wrestler, all within 2 years. So bravo to you, my friend. And I hope that our conversation will inspire others into doing whatever the fuck they want. I'm not trying to be a Tony Robbins, but it's just that I find that conversations with real people, it doesn't matter how popular or how successful you are. I find that having a conversation with you today about your journey and about the thing and how it brought you to professional wrestling and brought you to who you are today, I think it's an important conversation, and I hope that others will see it and be willing to maybe make changes to their life, be big or small. And it's one of the reasons why I do this podcast. And it's one of the reasons why I wanted you on, because I know you went through the fucking process and you came out on the other side successful, not only in professional wrestling, but with a career. And congratulations again. And I really appreciate you took the time to come on the podcast, and you accepted my invitation. And I hope to everybody listening that you enjoyed the conversation. Plug your shit. Plug your shit, man.
Well, first of all, I would just want to reiterate how thankful I am that you brought me on, because when I used to listen to your podcast, I thought about, man, I would like to work hard enough to be at the point where, maybe someday I'll be on. I think I even said that to you. The first BCW show that I was at. But so my socials, you can find me at Riley Adelphia on Instagram is my personal account. And that's where I post my workout stuff and just what's going on, a lot of my outdoors hobbies and stuff.
Yes, sir.
But also I keep my DMs open, just in case anybody ever wants to talk about anything, really any questions anybody has about wrestling or working out or whatever, or just, you want a place to rant and vent or whatever.
Yeah, of course.
I don't think anyone's going to reach out, but I just want everyone to know that it's there. Sometimes it's just nice to talk. And you can also find me at alexanderkable.tc on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I'm not very active on Twitter, but I do have it. And definitely throw me a follow on there, and come check out a wrestling show, I guess. And if you ever see me at a show, feel free to say hi, man. I like to talk to people. So
perfect, man. Once again, thanks a lot for coming on, man. I appreciate the time. I appreciate you taking the time to come here and having a conversation that's not really revolving around professional wrestling. To anybody, thanks a lot for listening. If you haven't done so, subscribe, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play. If you're an Apple user, iPhone user, and you want to subscribe to the podcast through Apple Podcasts, and you enjoy listening to the podcast, please give it a 5-star rating. It helps me out, and it helps my my views and putting my podcast out there. The more ratings that I get, obviously positive. If you didn't enjoy the podcast, then maybe don't give it a rating. Just don't listen to it. Only if you really enjoyed it, give it a 5-star rating. It helps me out, and it means a lot to me. If you want to leave a comment, you can leave a comment. Check me out on Instagram at savagepaulson.tcprodojo. You can also check me out on Twitter at Paulson Savage, and find me on Facebook under Stefan Paulson or the Night Train Express. And that's it. Thanks for listening, and have a good one. Much love, everybody.